Hey, welcome back to episode 23 of the Cellarcast. I felt like I had something I wanted to mention. Oh, yeah, there actually was a few things I wanted to just talk about, and I didn't even have them in my notes. Not super related to gaming. The first one is, wow, posture's very important. I did a load of laundry like 30 minutes ago, and when I was moving to put the stuff in and out, I just got a shooting pain that just went all around my back, and that was really painful, and I don't want that to happen again. Uh, I had it like once or twice before, and then I want to say like this year, and then the only time I can remember ever having that kind of a pain is it's like this like shocking, shrieking pain. Like, oh fuck. Like, I couldn't even like breathe. Or I couldn't take a breath in because it would move my back too much. I'm only 19. I don't want to. I don't want to be dealing with back problems. I need to fix my posture. The only time I had it before then was when I was like a freshman in high school, and I was just carrying heavy books every day and like taking like walking to and from school, and it was or from the bus, and it was that was not fun. That was a very alarming experience the first time I felt that. I need to fix my posture, and as part of that, recently I had to raise my monitor. So my problem is that I'm a fairly tall guy. I'm like 6 feet, which is actually, I think that's kind of average. It's like rough average in America, at least. I'm about 6 feet tall, and my chair. I've struggled with. I'm 6 feet tall and I have very long arms, so I've struggled with finding the right like ergonomic solution to basically being comfortable when I'm sitting at a desk all day. And it's hard, or it's tricky, because in the first place, sitting is not actually a very natural position for the body. We're not really supposed to be like this. The more natural resting position that's not like lying down is more of like a squat, like a straight up SLOBS squat. But we got chairs, so we make of it what we can. And so my problem was I had that problem with like my hands when I was playing fighting games, and then playing with my keyboard in my lap totally fixed that. I have no hand pain at all, so that was great. Got that off the list. Haven't had a problem with my mouse in a while, which I think is just a result of some of my other efforts to make my posture better, like trying to sit at like a, not quite straight up, but at like a slight angle, so that my back kind of goes into my chair. I do have like a semi-office chair. The problem with this is that it doesn't go high enough. It was a number of problems, mainly with my monitor, because my monitor was too low, and I would have to like look down. I would have to look ever so slightly down, or turn my head down, and that's a problem because having your head at a bad angle actually puts a ton of pressure on your neck. So if you have your head tilted like up, or probably even like down a little bit, you can be putting a lot of pressure on your neck and messing it up. So even with my monitor fully like pushed up as far as high as it can go, because it's adjustable, still was a little too low. So I tried to fix that when I first got it and I first built my PC and all that, by putting like a thick book I had underneath it. It's like an old, it's the Arbin book. Any of you trumpet players out there, the Arbin book for trumpeting, or what's the name? It's the Arbin book. It's like the Bible for trumpet players. It's pretty big. And instead of using it to play my trumpet, which I haven't done in like a year and a half, I used it to raise up my monitor a little bit. And then I just kind of figured last night or 2 nights ago, I was like, this isn't working. So I grabbed a shoebox because I need more height. And now I've got it on a shoebox, and I've like finally gotten it to a position where I actually feel kind of comfortable looking at my screen. So that's nice. Like I can actually like look at the screen with my head level, and I don't have to like turn my eyes down or anything weird like that, or tilt my head downward to get a comfortable viewing angle. I can just like adjust it as I want, and it's good. It's been working out a lot better. Why did I mention posh? Oh yeah, that was it. I don't know. The other thing is that I recently made the switch from Streamlabs OBS to OBS, regular OBS Studio, or original OBS Studio. And the reason for that, I don't know if anyone has heard of this, but it turns out that Streamlabs OBS is not related to OBS Studio, which came as kind of a shock to me. I always assumed that Streamlabs, or SLOBS, was just like a collaboration. If it was a different company, it was a collaboration, or it was like a version specifically made for streaming features or whatever. That's what I always figured. And the only reason I switched over from one to the other was I was originally using OBS Studio, and then I switched over to SLOBS because I was trying to film a video. This is like my second video ever. And when I would record, randomly, I was trying to record like bits of like me, you know, just the face cam bits of the video. And when I recorded, it every now and like randomly, every other recording, or it really did seem random, the audio would just be pitch shifted down like a full octave, and it was really weird. I don't know what caused it. I messed with all of my audio settings. I messed with the video settings just to see if there was something like different there. I looked at everything I could have, and I couldn't even find a solution online. So eventually I just said, fuck it. It was I had to re-record that video like 4 or 5 times. It was really annoying. Because the entire thing was basically I recorded it face cam, and then it wasn't all face cam in the video, but it was all recorded face cam, and then so it was you know, it was just a big effort, and it was a real headache to sort out, and so I was like, let me switch over to this other version of the software that they've got. So I switched over to SLOBS, and that's what I was using ever since. Then it comes out that apparently Streamlabs OBS actually has no affiliation with the original OBS. So Open Broadcast Software, which is it's a software that pretty much, I want to say, basically everyone uses to record and stream. That is it's an open source project by a group of not freelance. I mean, maybe freelance in this regard, but contributors, like volunteers. That's what I'm looking for. It's developed by a group of volunteers who have just been working on this program to make it easy and free way for people to record and stream without, paying for software to do the same. Now, because it's open source, it means that you can fork it. And fork, for anyone not familiar, just means that it's like a fork in the road or a fork in the development, where it's open source, so anyone has access to the code, the source code. So you can take that and then make your own program with it, and that is called a fork. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in collaboration with. You can just do it under the I forget which license it is, but there's an open source license, right? And there are other, like, Stream Elements. Stream Elements is created, I believe, using OBS source code. It's a fork of the original, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what it's meant for. That's why it's open source. Now, Streamlabs OBS actually began life as Twitch Alerts, which was the service plugin program that you would use, streamers would use to get those little Twitch alerts pop up on screen when people donated to them or subscribed or whatever. And the first shady thing is that Twitch Alerts was like a for-profit company when they are using the branding of another company that they're not affiliated with. You know, they make something for their that's used on their platform, but they never talked to actual like Twitch or Amazon or no one, right? So they already have like a history of being a little So when I say for profit, I mean they would do kind of scummy things, like, for instance, when you would donate bits to someone on Twitch, you would put in your credit card info and all that, and if someone had a that had Twitch alerts, and you were donating to a streamer who had Twitch alerts enabled, it would actually sign you up to like a premium membership, like a premium subscription with recurring payments, which you did not have to opt into. It was just part of donating. It was not opt-in, but it was opt-out, which meant that you had to manually go through the process of like contacting Twitch alerts and telling them that you did not sign up for this thing, or that you didn't want to be signed up for it. And this persisted well into the era of them rebranding. They eventually became Streamlabs OBS, and you're like, because they I don't know if they were originally built off a fork of OBS, but they became a program that was a fork of OBS. And so they what am I trying to say? Now they have the OBS name in their branding. They are a for-profit company, a private for-profit company that is not open source, and they're using open source software, which is fine, but they're using the branding and the name recognition of the open source software, which is actually not legal. You actually cannot do that legally under the open source license. And when they first rebranded, the OBS contributors contacted them and said, please do not use our branding because you're not affiliated with us, or if you are, then we can have we can make an agreement about this. And then they got nothing from them. They got nothing. And apparently they've been trying for years to get them to stop using their branding, and they just haven't. And then what follows is a few years. This is, I think, in 2018 that I think Twitch Alerts was definitely before that, but they rebranded in 2018. And so they built this software and then started cannibalizing other programs, like other bots, other previously open source programs, and made it so that the standalone versions of those, like the bots, and there was a few other things that I can't recall at the moment, you would need to get Streamlabs for it. It was only included in Streamlabs, and it ran worse than OBS, than regular OBS. So all of this, totally unbeknownst to me, right? And honestly, to most people. Some of you listening right now might not even have realized that there was a difference. So Streamlabs, basically, they have this long history of doing a lot of very shady, anti-consumer practices, such as, well, the aforementioned signing people up with a very, like, in the fine print subscription service, right? Which, by the way, apparently there were people at the marketing team at SLOBS who told them that they really shouldn't be doing that because it's a really bad idea, and then they fired the entire marketing team. Because, so, like, one of the number one things that they would get, the number one call that they would get for their customer support was, please get me off of this stupid subscription model, you fucking assholes. What the hell? What the hell? That's super scummy. Also, regular OBS, people would get... am I getting ahead of myself? No. Yes, I am. So they did that. They... oh yeah, and so when they brought it up that they really shouldn't be doing this opt-out service, the president or the CEO, the leader of the company, whoever, said, no, we can't stop doing it because it makes too much money. Our scam makes too much money. Literally, that's what he said. Just like awful, terrible practices, and all of this while using the OBS branding. So people would come to OBS, the real guys, and complain about this stuff, right? Either problems with SLOBS or SLOBS business practices, and the OBS guys are like, we don't have anything to do with them. Where else? Oh yeah, so this all kind of came to a head when there was a tweet by Lightstream, I believe they're called, which is basically an application that you can use to stream from your Xbox, from like an Xbox console, and it gives you a lot of the features and functionality of something like OBS while being on a console and not needing a stream-ready PC, right? So really convenient for people who only had access to a console and not really, maybe like a full PC. They could still get the PC streaming experience off of their console using Lightstream. And then, pardon me, bingo card. And then SLOBS copied literally that entire concept. And not only did they copy the concept, they called it Streamlabs Studios, which honestly is probably what Streamlabs should have been called in the first place. They copied they copied Lightstream, and they copied their entire marketing page. They had their like web page about like their product, and it was literally a word for word, like fully the entire format, the beat for beat recreation of Lightstream's website down to the user reviews, which they changed the names of like who the reviewers were, but literally the text was exactly the same, but all the nouns were changed. They just changed Lightstream to Streamlabs Studios. Incredibly scummy. And then they made a tweet about this, and then Elgato, who are still who produced the Stream Deck, right? Apparently, SLOBS has their own version of Stream Deck, which they called like OBS or Streamlabs Stream Deck. Like, are you serious, guys? It's like they're taking the fun. Not only are they taking previously independent programs and absorbing them into their mass like a big conglomerate of software, but they're also taking and just ripping entire concepts, not really adding anything new, and sometimes in the case of like the basic software, running worse than their competitors. SLOBS takes up way more CPU than regular OBS, than OBS, than the OBS. Fuck, I distracted myself. The ripping them off wholesale, not really adding anything, and sometimes working worse. So I was like, geez, I literally had no idea that any of this was going on. I just used the software. To make my videos. And honestly, I found that out, and I was like, you know what? I've been having problems with it. SLOBS has this terrible tendency I don't know if anyone else has ever had this with the software, but when I open it, especially if it has to do an update, if it has to like do its automatic update process, when it finally opens, it will just crash my video drivers. Does this happen to anyone else who've used it? It would just crash them. I don't have like a super, like I have a fairly, like I feel like I have a mid-tier PC, right? I can run pretty much anything pretty well. I don't run into performance issues with any game. Granted, I don't play very graphically intensive games, but that should be beside the point. Something like OBS should not be crashing my video drivers. Like, this is a software problem, not a hardware problem. And it was just so random. Like, I didn't know when it was going to happen, because sometimes I'm making a video and I'm like, oh, I need to get footage of like how many of my videos have a bit where I'm scrolling down like a web page, right? Like, that's in so many of my videos. I just open up OBS, screen record me scrolling down the website there. That's the background. That's like the B-roll footage for that bit. So that'll happen, like, I get to that part of the video, I'm like, okay, I need to grab some footage of that. And then bam, crashes. And then when the video drivers crash, not only does that mess up, it basically kills my blue light filter on my computer, which immediately causes eye strain for me. I use a fairly intense like blue light filter, so I have got a pretty Cheeto dusty screen, pretty Doritos. I got my gunners on. It's like I can make go watch Donkey's old Vel'Koz video where he's playing Vel'Koz in League. I gotta put my gunners on. The screen, it gets all orange. There's maybe like 3 people who know what I'm talking about. You know, and I use the Windows one because I don't feel like installing Flux. Most of the time it works fine, but when the drivers crash, it resets and it immediately causes pretty strong eye strain after like almost immediately. I got those sensitive eyes, right? And then if it like whatever, I have to restart in order to fix it, which is already annoying enough. What's even more annoying is that I can't even, when that happens, it screws up Premiere. Like, I go to Premiere and it like can't render any frames or anything. It's just like white in the preview window. And I'm like, oh, fuck, okay, I'll just restart. So this literally adds like it's not like crazy. It's going to take me like 3 minutes to get everything back up and where I was again. To get like all my software and programs up, and maybe I was running something in the background. It's just annoying and obnoxious, and I was like, you know what, I've had it. I've had my final straw. And there were things that annoyed me when I switched over initially, like when I did streams, one thing that I liked to do was play music. I like to play music on the standby screen. I would grab some game OST, I would let it play for like 5 minutes, and before I would show up, and then while I was talking, I would have it in the background, you know, like pretty normal stream stuff. I liked it. I liked doing it. And when you play like an MP3 file in OBS, you add like a media source to the scene, and then you select the MP3 file, and then when it starts playing, you have a little media control bar. Just a very simple, like, you know, playhead and like, you know, pause and play, and when it finishes, it loops. You can right click it and just check a box to loop when it gets to the end. Like, simple, useful, good. And then OBS SLOBS does not have that. In order to play music on SLOBS, what I would need to do was same thing, like add a media source into the scene, but there was no controls. So what you would have to do is click the little eye icon that like hides and shows and hides sources, like turns them on and off basically. And then you couldn't pause it and then resume playing. You would either have to like, it would play immediately, or you would have to click on it to basically turn it off and then turn it back on and would start from the beginning, which was annoying. It was just like, why isn't the functionality there? And then on OBS, you can basically drag and drop your, the sections of your, of the software anywhere you want. Like you can have your scenes, or sections, I should say, like windows, right? Windows inside of the, you got your stream preview, you have the sources, you have the scenes, you got all that, you have audio levels, and you can basically drag and drop those wherever you want in whatever configuration. For some reason in SLOBS, they have only presets that you can do, which I found really obnoxious. You couldn't change the sizing of them, you couldn't change what order they were in. It was just really dumb. So I finally made the switch over. I'm feeling better. Haven't run into the weird audio problem that I was having before, and I'm glad to be back on open source software. It feels nice. I've been talking for like 30 minutes about this stuff, but yeah, it was just crazy. Obviously I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't switch off from Streamlabs. That's your choice. You can do whatever you want, but I think you should be entitled to know what the company's up to, and you can make the decision for yourself whether or not you really care. Anyway, I feel like my accent really comes out when I say slobs. Slobs. Way back in I think the PC Fighting Games Volume 2? I don't remember if it was it was the first one, I think. There's a part where I say, like, take a look in the manual, and I was like, oh man. Oh man. My inner Illinois, is it Illinoisan? Illinoisite? What's the word for people from Illinois? Has anyone bothered to come up with a word for people from Illinois? Word for people from Illinois. Illinoisans. That doesn't sound Illinoisans doesn't sound good. Illinoisan? Because there's no vowels, or there's no consonant sound to split up oi and an. Which is because it's spelled Illinoisans, right? But it's anyway. Slabs. I'm I'm booting up slabs. I'm booting up slabs, and it's crashing my video drivers. Oh. I don't know, it's so funny to me. I'm booting up slobs. I'm trying to get footage of me scrolling down the web page on the Wikipedia for Tetris, and to make my YouTube video, and it's crashing my video drivers. Gosh darn. Should I do a whole podcast with like a really heavy Midwestern accent? Anyway, we're getting on the comment review. So last time, this is not a question, but I did ask what any ideas for characters from the LOL roster you would like to see on the Project L roster. Lozy says, specifically, when mentioning the that's a little, it's a three-part comment. Last time I talked a little bit about how much I hate trailers now that have interview cast footage needlessly thrown in to I don't know, basically just summarize what the viewer is also seeing in the trailer that they're cutting between. It's dumb. So same here, I hate those actors and directors selling the movie or series in a trailer. Also, the mini previews of the trailer in the same trailer. here's Spider-Man, the new trailer right now, and then the trailer begins. WTF. Yeah, I think that is actually because of YouTube ads. I think that's specifically because it's formatted for, because I remember watching a bunch of back in the early and mid 2010s, watching YouTube, and you'd get ads for movie trailers, and you would just skip it after 5 seconds. So I think they caught on, and they were like, okay, we need to do something to counter that, because people are not even seeing what the movie's called. So unlike a TV ad where you're seeing the whole thing, maybe. So on YouTube, they started formatting the ads specifically to be like, okay, in the first 5 seconds, we're going to tell you what this is to grab your attention if you are even in the market. It's their flailing attempt to get your attention on their trailer and to not skip if you are curious. It is, I noticed it, and that was, I definitely noticed when they started doing it. I don't remember exactly when. I want to say around like 2015 maybe. But I couldn't say for sure, because I don't know if any of those videos are like specifically, if they're just ads, or if you can go to them and watch them as like standalone videos. I'm not even sure. Yeah, it is like kind of, I mean, I use an ad blocker, but I do remember that being, it just kind of does kind of get on your nerves, because it is trying to blast you with information in 5 seconds, which is like, is kind of annoying. Nice. Active Blizzard news again. The world correctly returns to its course. Nice is a very generous way to describe the situation, but I'm glad you enjoyed the segment. We've got a little one coming up, by the way. And then specifically about the Project L roster, I want Nautilus. Hell yeah, because he was my first purchase at 4,800. I don't remember the currency name. Depending on when you played, it was either influence points or IP, and then they changed it to be blue essence. There was a point in time in League where there was like 4 different currencies, because the original system was just like in-game like free currency basically, which was called IP or influence points, and then riot points or your RP. And then when they added the loot boxes, or the loot crates, the CSGO style crates they added to the game, the Hextech crates, they added blue essence and orange essence, and blue essence was the one to make champions, and orange essence was the one for skins. And then there was like gems. If you got like 5 gems, you could make like a special limited skin that you could only get with gems. And then I don't know, they had like a couple, they introduced like 3 currencies with the Hextech system, the crate system, and it just got like way too much. And then they decided to make the crates more of a thing with progression, and replaced IP with blue essence. So yeah, that's a little history lesson. And honestly, I think it kind of worked better for the game, because you ended up IP was like a grind. What sucked about IP was that it was a grind that you couldn't even pay for. You just had to play the game. League had a lot of grinds that you couldn't just pay for. So you could always make the defense of like, well, it's not pay to win, but it wasn't particularly great. Anyway, I love Nautilus. So also Urgot and Yorick, the popular boys. Nautilus, Urgot, and Yorick used to be those who characters before they got reworked. Nautilus never got reworked. Funny thing about Nautilus, I used to freaking love playing Nautilus. I would play him in the jungle. Nautilus is a guy in a big diving suit with a big anchor. I always thought it was cool because I love like nautical themed stuff. And I would play him in the jungle role. So which is like, for anyone who doesn't play League, it's like the roaming. Basically, you're roaming. You're not stuck in you're not playing your lane, a specific lane. You're roaming between lanes to set up ambushes and stuff like that. Create some like 2-on-1 ambush situations, in short. And what I would do is, no one played Nautilus. Nobody played him because he's a very like tanky character, and tanks This is maybe like early season 5, like late season 4, early season 5. Tank were really not in. They were there, but they were not in style. That would come right around in season 5, but it's a different story. So you didn't see a lot of Nautilus, because his main thing was just, he's a big-ass tanky dude in a big suit of diving armor. Armor, diving suit, whatever, you know. And he had a lot of CC. He could lock you down. He had a hook. He throws his anchor to pull him in. He had a root when he hits you. He can root you in place. He's got a slow. He's got like a knock up on his ultimate. So he was like tank utility, that character, which was not super in at the time. So no one really played him. And the funny thing about him is that his taunt, I think, is he puts his anchor down and he goes, "Sometimes I think this thing just weighs me down." And then he starts swimming through the air. It's great. It's such a classic goofy emote. And I would do that. I would get into game, and while we're waiting for, like, you know, there's like a minute and a half of wait time at the start, like setup time. While I'm waiting for my camps to spawn, I would be like, "Hey guys, check this out." And then I would slash taunt, and I would do the swimming. People would be like, "What? Dude, that's so funny. I've never seen that before." I felt so cool. It was like my little secret. That was great when League still had like obscure champions. And speaking of, yeah, Urgot and honestly, I don't think Urgot works. I don't know if Urgot works as like in a 2D, from like a 2D perspective, or, you know, a side view perspective. Urgot's like a crab guy. He's like a guy with a bunch of, he's got like 6 legs, 6 robot legs. I don't, and it works fine. It's actually, they used it to their advantage when they reworked him, and they gave him this whole system that when he auto attacks, he has like a exhaust shootout from like the leg that's in the direction you attacked. And so you can always see, like, from, you know, the isometric view that League is played at, you can always see his legs in this mechanic. I don't know if it super works, or they would have to, I don't know. Maybe they could, but it wouldn't be my first pick. Yorick is also, yeah, that was a character who was so polarizing that he was either, if they literally buffed him at all or allowed him to be any strong at all, in any way, he would take over the game completely. Thanks, Dyrus. Thank you, Dyrus, in 2012, for discovering how broken Yorick was. And then he got reworked, and now he's like a grave digger. He summons these ghouls. He's cool. So too bad they reworked Galio and Poppy. Oh man, don't remind me of the Galio. I think that the Poppy rework was kind of necessary. Like, I used to play all the black sheep characters in League, and Poppy was one of them. Like, you're literally naming all the characters that I would love to play, because I just love playing characters that sucked or were underutilized. Poppy was one of them, and she was a character who was kind of in the same boat as Yorick, where her kit was so absolutely broken that they nerfed her to the point where you basically could not get out of the early game. You basically got stomped in the first 10 minutes, or if you didn't and you actually managed to pull through, because like her base stats were so low. It was so hard to get anything going with her. But if you survived and you got like 2 items, I remember that happened a few times, and I was like, oh yeah, they cannot allow this to, this character can never be good. This character can never be strong. She's insane. And then Galio was BS when Galio got reworked. Galio was basically, as a gargoyle guy, his original design was he was an anti-mage. So when he built magic resist, he gained magic power, basically. When he built magic resist, his own magic damage increased, to put it succinctly. I'll turn on the light in here. And he was never weak. He was never weak is the thing that was frustrating. Galio was never weak He was actually very, very strong in the right against the right team. If your team had like two big magic damage dealers on it, you could pick Galio and do really well. And I did, right? Like I put up some results with Galio. But he was a counter-pick champion. And honestly, I think he should have stayed like that, because he was cool and he was fun to use. And he had a really fun ultimate where he just taunted everyone in a big circle and did a big explosion. And that was really fun to use, to like flash into a team and do that. And then they reworked him into basically just being like a tank support. And it was really lame, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. Too bad they reworked Galio and Poppy. The old supers in a fighting game would be very OP, like taunting the two opponents meanwhile you damage both with your partner, or being immune to a certain opponent for 10 seconds. More powerful if only left one opponent. Yeah, so what he's referencing here is Poppy, her original design, her super, I still remember, not her super, her ultimate was called Diplomatic Immunity. She's a little blue girl with a hammer is her thing. Hammer and a shield. And what it would do is you would select one character on the enemy team and you would cast it on them, and then you could only take damage from that person. I don't remember if they could like CC you, like if other people could stun you or anything, but you could only take damage from that one person. So what would happen is you would go into a team fight and then you would just ult either the support or the tank or whoever was doing the worst on the enemy team, and then you would make a beeline for the carry and just run them down with your hammer and stuff. And honestly, yeah, in a fighting game, that would be a really interesting, maybe broken like super, to just say like the other character, the character who's like tagged out at the moment, cannot harm me. That would be whack. And then, yeah, Galio being able to, like, taunt two characters. Yeah, that seems like it would be something like a punish super. Because that's always, what it was in League. Like, you would punish someone for their bad positioning, flash in, and then do the big ultimate where you taunt everyone in a circle. And you just collect it. You would taunt them which meant that they would have to, like, walk towards you. So you would collect them all in an area and then just set up for a giant wombo combo with your team. That shit was so fun. And then, yeah, Teemo with the military costume, I imagine would play like Testament. Fuck, don't put him in. Don't put him in. I feel like, honestly, I don't know if Teemo would be Testament. He might be like a... Testament has like the poison. He can like poison you. Testament is just a screen pollution character, as I like to call him. He just puts shit on the screen and overwhelms you. Teemo in League was always like he's like a ranged zoner, because if you get in on Teemo, he completely falls apart, which is kind of like why he actually sucks. And he's basically like a skill check character, where like if you don't know how to deal with Teemo, you're going to get run over. He is going to obliterate you. But if you do know how to bait out some of his key abilities and then go in on him, he was the easiest character. I stomped so many Teemos when I was playing like Nocturne Top and Mundo Top and all those. Because you would realize that when you get on them, they just don't know what to do. Teemo as like a Testament type character, because like Testament can set up these traps. Yeah, actually, no, Testament he can like set plant the seed, and then when you step on it, a big tree pops up and it poisons you. That's literally Teemo's shrooms, because they're invisible. The invisible traps. Oh my god, you're right. Like Testament, but instead of having anything up close, he's like Testament and what's like a zoner trap character? There's gotta be a zoner trap character that I'm just not thinking of. Maybe like Rachel from BlazBlue? Udyr is the typical stance character. Udyr would be a dope stance character. He would be really cool. Udyr in League, he has these 4 different stances that he can go between. And there's like 2 main damage ones, and then one's like basically for shielding and defense, and then one is for it's like it just lets you stun. That's the thing, is it lets you stun when you hit someone. Garen is Street Fighter 2 Turbo Honda with only spinning. And Annie is like Carl from BlazBlue. Honestly, I feel like Annie might be more like Zato. Because I think like Annie has... I don't know how Carl plays, is my problem. I need to get more into BlazBlue. Whenever BlazBlue Central Fiction gets rollback, I'll get into it. I'll put some time into it. I thought, I thought Hibiki was cool, and then, I use Hibiki's theme in a lot of my videos. And then, crap, what's his name? He's in that famous Dogura set. Oh, Dogura plays him. Azael. Is it Azael or Azrael? BlazBlue. Azrael, yeah. He looks cool. He looks like the type of character that I would like, of slow, big damage, not a grappler. I feel like Annie would be more like when I imagine her, I think of like Zato, because like Zato has like the time limit on how long he can have Eddie out. I feel like Annie would have like, oh, she kind of like gets you in a situation where she can drop her bear, and then she does a bunch of like setup stuff with the bear, and then the bear's gone, and then she has these like swings, right, of these swings of power. On the waifu side, we already talked about Urgot. I don't know what other waifus. Vi is like Mika from Under Night. I don't know what Mika's like from Under Night. Honestly, when I think of Vi, I think of like either Blanca or like Mei. They're kind of like the same thing. It's a shame that this game doesn't have charge mode or doesn't have motion inputs, because I feel like when I think of Vi, I'm like, she's literally a charge character. She literally charges up her gauntlet and then does like a dash punch forward like Balrog. But I think that actually maybe she would play a little bit more like Balrog in terms of like, maybe not like a straight up rush down, but she gets in and with the punches and the lunging punches, and then kind of hits you with her buttons. Or pressures with her buttons, I should say. Nidalee is Valkenheim. Oh, that's perfect. So that's literally perfect. Valkenheim turns into a wolf. Nidalee turns into is she a panther or a cougar? She's a cougar. I think the technical, she has some skins where it's like some different animals, but yeah, some different big cats. Yeah, actually, yeah. I'm thinking about it, like Valkenheim, but maybe it's sort of like Idol from Killer Instinct. So hear me out. Idol's deal is that it's like he's like a cyclops with 2 heads. So he one of the heads is like a ranged magic using like zoner, and the other head is rushdown. It's a rushdown. It's got a big, does he have a club, I think? Yeah, it's a big club. And he switches between the two based off of, I think, what ender he does. So he actually goes he switches between these two play styles, kind of like Nidalee, how she goes from her human form is like she throws these spears, she chucks these javelins, and then she goes into cougar form and rushes down. So like she could be like a zoner who could transition into a rush down. That would be neat, because when she hits, that's actually could translate perfectly into a fighting game, because her whole deal in League is that when she lands one of her spears, she marks the target, and then when she transforms into her panther form, cougar form, she gets like increased. Her abilities have like either extra damage, or she has like a pounce ability that gets a ton of increased range. It will basically just let you automatically pounce onto someone with a mark in a big range. LeBlanc is Morrigan. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like how I would do LeBlanc in a fighting game. And the problem is that I feel like her gimmick, or like the cool thing about LeBlanc, is that she does like a dash teleport, and then she can teleport back to her original location, which is literally what Echo does for all of his regular special moves. And I feel like, I don't know, you'd have to like maybe... Morrigan is like, they both have like projectiles, and... Can I see LeBlanc having like an uppercut? I don't know how you would do LeBlanc, although I think LeBlanc's cool. I like her. Misfortune is Noelle Vermilion. I could see that. Yeah, because MF in League has like mechanics around like hitting different targets with her shots. It does like bonus damage if it's on the first hit, and then subsequent hits do less. They don't get the little damage buff. Ashe is a mix of... I could see you, what I'm saying, like I could see you like maybe having a system similar to that, but like she has to like hit certain moves that give her that damage boost that like are optimal, or she could have like specific routes that let her get that kind of like extra damage. What am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is I'm imagining like she could have, I think in League, the passive is called Love Tap. So the first time you hit an enemy, it does bonus damage. And then she had just like an emulation of that mechanic in Project L, but it only, you have to like maybe hit the assist? I have no idea. Maybe she could do some really great happy birthdays. When she just hits your assist, starts applying it to like back and forth between the both of you. That would be really funny. Ashe, a mix of Sub-Zero and Hawkeye. That makes sense. That makes it Frost Archer with the snow and yeah, I don't know, I could see it. The ice powers. Keep going all day, so I'm going to stop writing. Yeah. You could literally go, I mean, there were ones that I was thinking of, like, who's like another sure bet? Oh yeah, I didn't even think like Ezreal. Ezreal's definitely, he's like one of the mascots, right, of the game. Ezreal totally having like his like blink and his like teleport, his what else? He's got like the different ranged. The problem is that Ezreal's Q and his W are like almost the exact same ability, and they had to like change what his W was to make it more interesting, where it's like, oh, if you hit his W, it applies a mark, and then you can hit him with the Q. Although that's actually another like ability for like a fighting game, kind of like Azrael in BlazBlue. Like Azrael's deal is that he has moves that apply marks to the opponent. He can have 2 marks on, and the marks basically, he can basically cash out the marks to apply extra damage, which is one of the reasons he hits so hard. Because if he gets 1 or 2 marks on you, you're going to Pain Town on the next combo. I could definitely see Ezreal having kind of a similar system, where he's maybe more of a glass cannon, but he needs to apply these marks to you. Yeah. Anyway, that was the comment review. What was even on the agenda? I've been talking for a fucking hour about this shit. I'm just reminiscing. I wanted to talk about some news. Jeez, this is going to be a long episode. I was thinking this was going to be a short one. We have a quick, play the song. Play the song, Johnny. Play the song, Billy. It's the Blizzard block, baby. Timestamps on it. Put the song in. So this one comes to us from Kotaku. This is a short story. It's written by Luke Plunkett. Oh, I remember his name. Report: Activision CEO Bobby Kotick, who will murder you, will consider quitting if he can't fix company's culture. So Bobby Kotick, who will murder you and is friends with Jeffrey Epstein. That's not a joke. That was a real thing. If you don't remember, I'm going to bring it up. I want to bring it up more. So, besieged. I like using the word besieged to describe him. Activision Actibliz CEO Bobby Kotick, who last week, blah, 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 reportedly said he will consider leaving the company if he can't speedily address the harassment issues that have made headlines around the world this year. So he would consider leaving the company if he can't quickly fix the culture problem at the video game giant. He met with the executives at Blizzard and told them this. Again, this is like he's doing his little sneaky snake talk, his little, and basically the language like consider. So here's the thing: he didn't even say he will. First of all, First of all, what does quickly mean? What define quickly, right? What is quickly? What does fix mean? Because we're talking about a culture problem, right? So what does fix mean? It's not you can't really measure it, right? It's difficult to measure a culture. So what does fix mean? What does quickly mean? And if you can't, you will consider. So this seems like a big statement. You're like, oh, he's thinking about stepping down? But then once you read into the language, you're like, oh, this is extremely non-committal. I'll consider it, you know. He could easily just say, yeah, I considered it, and I don't think I will. So not of his own volition. What is this related story? Activision's damage control reaches sad new low. Oh, what? I didn't even see this. Again, from Mr. Plunkett. The company is forming a workplace responsibility committee led by 2 current members of the board. Oh my god. Oh, yeah. Policies won't retrospectively apply to the conduct of CEO Bobby Kotick. Let's go back to the first story. Yeah, It's also said that at a separate meeting on Friday, quote, top executives of Activision Publishing relayed to Mr. Kotick that some employees wouldn't be satisfied unless he resigned, according to those people. And Mr. Kotick said that he was ashamed of some of the incidents that had happened on his watch and apologized for how he handled the unfolding problems. The next sentence is, this is bullshit. Kotick took charge of a reborn Activision in 2008. Those culture problems he's talking about are a systemic level of harassment, misogyny, and abuse fostered through years of cultural neglect and at times reportedly committed and protected by Kotick himself. Now, to be fair to Bobby, he did fire one of the rapists. He did fire one rapist. He covered up at least three of the 4, but he did fire one. Or covered up, or did very basically hand waved, stern talking to the others. So, in his defense, it's not a total loss. We're batting 1 for 3. Okay, we're keeping score. I think he sucks. Bobby Kotick sucks. Oh my god. There's another related story from Kotaku called Bobby Kotick has always been a slimy asshole, and the first line is, Bobby Kotick is a weasel of the highest order. Confusion of the highest order. Shout out if you recognize that reference. Anyway. I think I'm done talking about Bobby Kotick for the week. Wondering about something kind of interesting. Another little story. This one comes from the South China Morning Post by Josh Ye, who I think has been featured on all of these stories about China and their crackdowns on gaming. So China suspends Tencent from updating existing apps or launching new apps, report. So essentially what happened here is that China has, quoting from the article, China has suspended Tencent Holdings from updating its existing apps or launching any new apps as part of a temporary administrative guidance against the tech giant. So now the reason for this is pretty interesting, because the reasoning, at least according to the article, is not because of not necessarily, possibly has to do with it, but not necessarily because of the earlier thing about the the whole talk about being a social opioid, gaming being dangerous for the youth, for the youthdom. Apparently it's because China has been actually introducing, kind of ironically, some of the strictest online information privacy laws ever, like the strictest data security laws, some of those strictest ones in the world. And Tencent nibbles on all of your data. So according to the report, China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, the CMIIT, has told app stores and platforms to implement the order against Tencent apps from Wednesday in a harsh administrative punishment against the tech giant, which runs dozens of apps, including the super app, I don't know what a super app is, WeChat, that has 1.2 billion users. Tencent said in a... so this is kind of maybe affecting a lot of people's ability to communicate. Obviously it's a functional app, but not getting support is a little, maybe not great. I don't know. There are more than 70 apps published by Tencent that are active, and there are more than 100 games published by Tencent mobile games. So what this means is that, I don't know how big Wild Rift is in China. It honestly might be huge, because League is already huge, and mobile gaming's huge. But this is a big hit. You cannot update the game. That's really wild. League is a game that patches every 2 weeks, and now they're telling them you're not allowed to update your game for the foreseeable future. We are continuously working to enhance the user protection features within our apps, and have also have regular cooperation with relevant government agencies to ensure regulatory compliance. Our apps remain functional and available for download, Tencent said. The regulatory move comes amid Beijing's ongoing scrutiny of the country's tech sector. Beijing has been turbocharging its legislative efforts to regulate data in the country, having enacted the cybersecurity law in 2017, followed by the data security law this September, which requires firms to undergo a security assessment to gain approval before sending user data overseas. Oh, so they want it. They want your data. And in November, China enacted... I'd put a comma there, but there's no... What is November China? Is that a special kind of China? In November, China enacted the Personal Information Protection Law, one of the world's toughest regulations for personal data security, with far-reaching implications for cross-border data transfers and how companies operate within the country. So this is actually kind of interesting, because when you really read into some of the laws around their data protection, it's specifically targeting sending data overseas, which is understandable. However, it is also the government trying to regulate overseas communications with people outside of the country, which is a little concerning. China is concerning. It's the understatement of you last, let's say 20 years. Tencent has run into various app update problems in recent months. In July, it suspended new users from signing up for WeChat, as it updated the app's security framework to comply with regulatory changes. New signups resumed in August. In September, Tencent drew a line between WeChat and its China-only version, Weixin, requiring users to choose one or the other as China's strict new data laws came into effect. So they have a specific China-only version, which I'm assuming is not unless you were traveling overseas and using it, not going to be as affected by these new laws. Analysts said the move by the social media giant was part of efforts to comply. The ministry has been regularly naming and shaming apps that it deems guilty of violating regulations or infringing user rights. And mind you, in China, shame is not just a social concept. It is literally a quantifiable metric in the form of your social credit score. So having the government come out and say that you are a bad influence is kind of heavy. Might have some far-reaching implications that we don't immediately think of in the West. Among others from competitors such as Alibaba Group Holding and ByteDance. In a November 3rd list of 38 apps named and shamed by the ministry for excessively collecting user data, 3 apps were developed by Tencent, namely Tencent News, a karaoke app, and QQ Music. QQ, nerd. So this is... we had the discussion earlier when they made the big crackdown on limiting games in China. Namely, like limiting... What am I trying to say? Limiting children's game time in China. Basically parenting the kids for the parents. How busy do you have to be that you can't look at you can't parent a single child, 2 children? They don't have that many kids. Like if you've got like 30 kids, it's like okay, maybe you need some laws around how much Fortnite they can play because you can't keep track of all of them. You got 2 kids. Come on, step it up. Like, come on. The heck. And that's basically in the long term, in the next 10 years at least, I think. Maybe even 5, depending on, I don't know. Honestly 10, because you're going to have to be a kid for it to really take effect. It's going to get stronger as it goes on. The gaming industry is going to crumple up and shrivel up and die in China if that policy is kept. And this is even further affecting, it's almost like a collateral impact on the games industry. Because this looks like it's mainly actually targeting other apps that they produce and that other Chinese companies produce based off of, this whole data collection thing and trying to control what data goes in and out of the country. Or it looks like right now just out of the country. But it does affect gaming it kind of like adds on to it. It's kind of like it's an exacerbating factor to what's already going on, how they're cracking down on games. I think, honestly, we're going to see if the thing with children's like the game time limits was already probably enough, but I think we're going to see a lot of Chinese companies, a lot of Chinese developers try to expand globally. I think in a funny way, we're going to see business imperialism. Business imperialism as China realizes that their home market maybe actually isn't as viable because of their government. And now they need to start moving overseas into other countries, other high population centers. India would be an interesting one for them to move into. Could you imagine if a bunch of Chinese software developers, like large companies or fairly large companies, decided to move their operations to India and then capitalize on the gigantic population there? You could probably get a lot of pretty cheap labor compared to, I don't know how much you get paid in China, but maybe equivalently cheap labor with people who are really into India has a huge tech potential. Wouldn't that be really interesting if there was this Chinese-Indian coalition in tech? I just started working, the two big population countries started working together to make Genshin Impact or something. Because I don't think India I don't know about India's privacy laws or something, but I haven't. I'm not familiar enough with what is holding India back from being a big tech force. Maybe it's growing. So I can't really make any kind of call there. But yeah, interesting news. Definitely, I'm sure that Riot Wild Rift in China is sweating. It's good that Riot picked this time to start diversifying their portfolio and all that. I want to move on to the last story. This one comes from VGC, Video Games Chronicle, courtesy of Andy Robinson. Zelda 64 has been fully decompiled, potentially opening the door for mods and ports. So basically what happened is that a team of fans has been working for the last 2 years to recreate, basically if you watched my video on dead MMOs, basically do the same process that legacy servers have to do, except it's just not an MMO. It's just a single player game. It's just Ocarina of Time. So they basically, because people know Ocarina like the back of their hand, right? There's a lot of people who not only love this game more than their own children. They know it inside and out. Down from just people playing it, from speedrunners, from all this stuff. So what they've essentially done is, I'm not sure how they basically recreated Ocarina of Time by reverse engineering the code. So looking at the functions in the game, and even though you don't have the source code, recreating it in C code, which can be read by modern computers. So essentially what they've done is they have, from the ground up, recoded Ocarina of Time to perfectly or mostly perfectly, I'm not sure, emulate how the original game works. So this is not emulation. Pardon me. This is not emulation. This is recreation. This is recreation, and supposedly, according to the article, the project also does not use any of Nintendo's original copyrighted assets, such as graphics or sound. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means that they remade the models. That doesn't seem right to me. If you check out their website, zelda64.dev/progress.html. The ZRET is what they're called. Decompilation. They have a timeline of status. So they have this kind of like interactive graph where you can check. Apparently they're also working on Majora's Mask and Minish Cap. But they have hit... looks like Minish Cap is much further along than Majora's Mask. I'm curious how they did... how they handled the graphics. Maybe they just said that. Maybe you can just like download... maybe it's like you download the code, but it's missing graphics, and then you just download new one. You just download them from the like a separate page or something like that. Like, here's all the graphics and sound for the game. Put this into the folder, and it'll work. So very similar to the Super Mario 64 PC port, which was cease and desisted by Nintendo, because of course they did, but it's out there forever now because it was put on the internet, where they took Mario 64, and it was a similar, like, 2-year process. They decompiled it, and then now you can play Mario 64 on your PC in widescreen, in HD, I think even up into like 4K, with AI upscaled HD textures, with new models, maybe even like remastered audio. I have no idea. Fully moddable, perfect. And then you look at, the Super Mario 3D All-Stars package, and you're like, wow, Nintendo, they really didn't give a shit when they did their version. Super impressive, really dope. What's great about this is that it's basically, not technically, but basically a source port of Ocarina of Time. It's not like the real source code, but it's new source code, which means that Ocarina of Time can now be ported to like a bunch of stuff if you want. You might be able to get this working on like not just like any computer, but like other consoles. You get this on phones, and not being emulated, right? Not running an emulator, which might be more graphically intensive. You can actually, or CPU intensive, you can actually like create Ocarina of Time like mobile, whatever you want to call your source port, and like optimize it for mobile platforms. And I'll like just plug it on an APK on your Android. That would be sick. That would be it's actually super cool. Modding is now much easier. It's just really dope. The emulation community just keeps winning. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So in this article, they say the Mario 64 project eventually led to the creators and fans of the project porting that version to other platforms, including you could play it on a DSi, 3DS, and a Switch. So you could literally play the better version, a really good, lovingly made remaster of Mario 64 on your Switch compared to the actual official one. Emulation just keeps winning, baby. We got it. We did. I'm not going to act like I'm part of the emulation community, even though I'm very passionate about it. Like, I don't do coding, but I think it's great. This is a major win. I think just symbolically, it's really sick to see. It's not going to preserve things like games that have been are in danger, that were digital only. It's not going to get physical materials and design documents that may have been lost or anything like that. But it is, I don't know, just sick. It's great. I'm a big fan. Having a classic be so now like readily open, I think is a great move. I think it's a great step forward. So shouts out to the fellas. Apparently there's a Marvel MMO coming out sometime. Apparently by the same people who DC Universe. All right, that's neat. Anyway, last thing I wanted to talk about. I've been playing Shin Megami Tensei 4. I was hearing, what made me want to play it? I was listening to the Castle Super Beast podcast, And I think Wooly was playing which the SMT? Devil Summoner Raido Kuzunoha versus the Soulless Army. Yeah. Which is an SMT spin-off. And he was describing it, and I was like, well, that's cool. And then I looked it up, and I was like, damn. This character looks badass. Raido Kuzunoha. I'm a big fan of this look. And, I've been interested, so I love Persona 3. I'm a big fan of that game, right? And I've never beaten it because I can't deal with the last, like, ending section of that game, so I've never beaten it. But I love that game. And I don't know, it's weird that a spin-off gets more recognition than its, like, original. What's the opposite of, like, a spin-off? Like the root? The original? I don't know. I'll call it the original. It's weird that it's rare that a spin-off gets more popular than the original. But it makes sense. Especially after playing this game. Because basically what I've come to understand is that Persona is literally Shin Megami Tensei, except way more approachable. So... SMT, I wrote some notes about the order I wanted to talk. So I haven't played a JRPG in a while, and I'm actually really enjoying going back to the genre, especially because I really like the combat system in this game, and I enjoyed it in Persona, and I'm enjoying it again here. So the first thing that you will notice that's different from Persona is that SMT... Persona, I think that looking at the game's soundtracks is very, gives you a good idea. So, like, Persona, starting from 3, had kind of, which is where they really got their identity, had a very, all the soundtracks have taken very clear inspiration from very specific musical genres. Specifically, like, all, like, Persona 3 is, like, I think, like, hip-hop and rap. 4 is, like, rock. 5 is jazz. So, all, specifically all, like, black American music genres. SMT is grunge. The soundtrack is, like, whining, barely in tune guitars. And like the battle theme is like, and you're like, Jesus, it feels, it's much more dirty and like apocalyptic. It feels like there's just this kind of ominous sense, even just in the soundtrack, that like, the world is bad. The world is a bad place, and you're living in it. I really love the OST in this game. I have to admit, I have just gotten. I'm about. I'm like 15 hours in. About, and I feel like I've just, or maybe around like hour 12 or 13, I felt like I finally got to where the game actually starts. If you've played the game, you know what I mean, but it's when you get through the what would I call it? It takes a similar style to Persona 3, where in P3 you go to Tartarus. So there's a Tartarus equivalent in SMT4, which is like Naraku. It's sort of the equivalent. It's like a multi-level dungeon that you delve into repeatedly, and you go further and further. And in SMT4, you start hitting these like different levels of the dungeon. Like there's different floors already, but there's different... It's separated a little more than that. And there's 2 big levels that you go through. And I broke through that second one, and if you've played the game, you know what I mean, and you know that the game changes a lot once you get that twist. I was thinking there's a lot of like interesting mysteries that are laid in the story. So like the idea is that you're in this kind of fantasy world that is vaguely like Japan inspired, but it's also got some like medieval European stuff. They use a lot of like Japanese words and concepts, but or historical concepts, but there's also things from like European medieval architecture and stuff like that. And all the characters are very clearly like Asian. And you the thing is like you go with your friend, you're from a village. You go to the castle town, which is like the capital city of your country or whatever, and you're trying to become samurai, which is like it's the job of the game. There has to be like a word for this. There's gotta be, when you watch like a piece of media and it's like, in Naruto it's ninjas, in One Piece it's pirates, in Hunter x Hunter it's hunters. It's like it's the job. There's gotta be, it's such a common trope that it feels like there's gotta be some kind of a word for it. It's the made up, or at least like, pirate in One Piece does not necessarily mean the same thing as in real life, but it's the made up job that is like the cool thing. It's what you're trying to do, that the people who do things, the movers and the shakers. Samurai are basically that in this game, or in this world. And you go, and they have a whole initiation ceremony. They have an approval ceremony where you go and you either get approved or you don't. So you go over there with your friend. He goes in. He comes out. He's really upset because he was rejected, and this is like his dream. And you go in, and they're like, "We're going to attach the gauntlet to you," and then they attach to your arm what is very clearly like a modern technology, like mechanical gauntlet, like an arm thing that you fit over your arm, like a piece of machinery, and then it lights up, and they say, "Oh, the mystic light has shone down upon the gauntlet, and the mystic script has appeared," and you look down, and on the gauntlet, like a digital LCD screen has lit up and activated, and there's text on it that is very clearly just Japanese, and they're calling it the mystic script, and you're like, okay, this is a little what's going on here? And things just and there's like, every one of the samurai has one of these gauntlets, and there's like a little AI called Burrows in there, which is like kind of like your operator, who serves as like the menu and all that. And you're like, okay, then you start doing like, I would call like normal Persona SMT stuff. You go into Naraku, you talk to demons, you negotiate with them, you ally yourself with them, and then you use them to fight other demons, and you do different quests, and there's plot stuff that happens, blah 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 blah. And then like you go into like, Naraku is just like a series of caves and tunnels, and then you hit a point, you beat the first boss, and then after that you go another floor deeper, and suddenly you are no longer in a cave. You are in like a clearly like cement and metal like building, like some kind of like a modern building that's like made of like concrete, and there's machinery around that is like, the whole thing is in disarray. And you go into a room and you find a gun, and the characters don't know what a gun is, and Burroughs identifies it, and so there's this whole like fear about going deeper into Naraku, because supposedly that's the domain of the unclean ones, who are like, it's like hell basically. It's Hades, right? The unclean ones are the denizens of hell, and they come up through Naraku, or they hang around in Naraku. So they're worried about, and they've never gone that deep down, but there's plot reasons why you got to go down in there. And eventually, I don't know if I should, it's a good twist, so I don't want to spoil it, but I had a thought about where it was going and what the twist was going to be, because I know that there's like time travel and alternate dimension stuff in SMT, and I don't know the details, but I know that it exists. And I was kind of anticipating it. I was building up, like picking up on some of the clues and things that they were throwing in there. And stuff that really makes your head turn. Like, oh my god, freaking... There's a scene where you talk to like a baker. It's like you get a day off and you go hang out with your friends at the samurai place. What I like is that it's kind of like Persona, where you have this like main hub area that's sort of like, it's not really school. It's sort of like how Persona uses school in the dorms, except it's not school. You're just going in and fighting demons. It's great. SMT is in many ways the anti-Persona, as I've heard it described. So what was I talking? Yeah, so you get an off day with your samurai buds, and then you go and you're like, oh, we're gonna have lunch. We got to go down to the bakery. So you go to the bakery, and the baker starts telling you while he's preparing your food. He starts telling you about this thing he just found. It's called literature. It's capital L literature, and you're like, what is that? No one has ever heard of that. And then he starts pulling out books, right? Because like they know what books are and all that stuff, and the characters in this world, they read things like, you know, ancient fables and history texts and stuff like that, maybe like informational texts, but literature is like different. And he starts pulling these books out, and the first book he pulls out is No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai. And I did a triple take. Now, I don't know if you know this, but No Longer Human is like one of the seminal pieces of Japanese literature. It is like one of the most important books in their literary canon, at least of the post-20th century. It was written in 1948. It's basically about a guy who, it's written in the style of these memoirs. So like several journals that this character has written down about his life. And he starts out and how when he was a kid, he never felt like he could understand people. And then as he grew older, he became more and more estranged to society and to humanity. And he accrues these vices and things he does that cause him a lot of guilt. You can go read it for yourself. It's a wonderful. Wonderful makes it sound happy. It's really not. It's very dreary. And eventually he comes to the conclusion that society is the purpose of society is to escape from society. You gotta get out and live a life of isolation. So that's why it's called No Longer Human. Because I think that technically the original Japanese more accurately translates to disqualified from being human. So he forsakes his humanity, and he feels like he literally cannot relate to the people around him on the most basic level, which is really interesting to pull out in a video game and specifically reference, number one, because we're in a fantasy setting, and then he just pulls out this book, and I'm like, what the fuck? And then to actually have those themes, like, are you just... There was one other book, and I missed the one that he said, but I wasn't familiar with it. But I'm sure it's also a similar, like, relatively modern book, not belonging in fantasy Japan world, medieval Japan world. So I was already thinking about, like, okay, maybe there's, like, something going on. Is there, like, a time travel thing? And I was wrong. I was super wrong. I was really, really wrong. And the twist is honestly way more interesting than that. And I won't spoil it, but there is some weird stuff. Honestly, there might still be time travel involved, and I wouldn't be surprised. But as of the time of me recording this, I am not at a point where I am not at a point where I can say with any degree of certainty. I want to recommend a song from the OST, but the name of the song is potentially spoilers for what the twist is. I don't know. Look up my favorite song so far. Well, I actually have two favorite songs. One of them is the all the music is great. Go listen to, like, the battle and the boss themes, but I specifically love the Demon Fusion theme, which is for the it might be called Mido or whatever. It's the whole interface where you, like, fuse demons and all that. Great, like, weird, like, electronic organ music. It's the equivalent of the Velvet Room, if you're familiar with Persona. It's called Mido in this game. And that and the theme for the song is called Tokyo. If you just look up SMT4 Tokyo OST, listen to that song. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I am really into it. The gameplay it's like Persona, but more unforgiving. Or double negative. Or wait, double... Whatever. It's less forgiving, is what I'm trying to say. It's like Persona, but less forgiving. So, SMT... I think Persona, it's called, like, the Another system, or Another Turn. In SMT, it's called Press Turn, and it's slightly different. So, like, in Persona, when you... they're remarkably similar in many ways. The combat systems of both series, or both games. I don't know about the entire. There might be different changes. I'll say games for now, because I'm only playing this one game. The combat systems of both games are remarkably similar in that, like, you still have all the different demons, or in Personas they're just called Personas, and they all have different. There's the whole chart of elemental weaknesses and attack type weaknesses and all that, and hitting them and hitting opponents with their weaknesses. But the way Persona handles it is when you hit an opponent with their weakness, they basically get knocked over. And if you knock over every opponent in the fight, you get to do the all-out attack. And I think, like, they either miss their turn. If you don't do an all-out attack, the opponent, that specific enemy will miss their turn, or they'll miss their action the next time it's their turn. Or it's been a minute since I played Persona 3, so I forget the exact specifics of it. In SMT 4, at least, this uses what's called the press turn system. So when you hit an enemy with their weakness, they don't get knocked over, but you basically, there will be a little message at the bottom, like, the character smirked. Basically, they get emboldened. And when they are emboldened, you get you win an extra turn, or an extra action on your turn. So if you have a full party of 4 and every single party member hits a weakness, you will get 4 extra turns, an extra one for each time. So if you play your cards right and you know the weaknesses, you can get 8 actions in a single turn. So did I mention that like when you get emboldened, that character cannot be hit by their own weakness? That's another thing. So it's full of, so it's extremely momentum based. Like if it's your first turn, you can hit an enemy with their weakness and then basically get the ball rolling to steamroll the entire fight and not allow the other side to get a single move in. You can just do that. Now the reason this is difficult is that the reason the game is difficult is that enemies can also do that to you. You are just as vulnerable to it happening to you. There have been times, it uses the same system as at least P3. I don't know if the other games do this. I don't actually know. I've only played P3. Not 4 or 5 yet. But at least in Persona 3, you have like the area where you're walking around, like you're in Tartarus, and it's the combat area, so to speak. It's the dungeon where enemies are, and enemies appear as, they're not random encounters, but they will basically appear as little like representations, as little characters on that, I'll call it an overworld. So in P3 they're like little shadow blobs, and they run at you, and you'll get into a fight with them, and then once you're on the screen it'll be like the actual enemies. So you can see enemies on the overworld, and you can choose to run away from them, and then you have the additional kind of little interaction of your character has a weapon, and you can attack with the weapon, and if you attack the opponent before they attack you, you start if you attack the little shadow blob, you will start the fight with the initiative, and if they touch you first, the enemy will start with the first turn. SMT4 does the same thing, except they're like little hologram, or not little, but like they're like hologram figures that spawn in and will run towards you. And this game, if there's anything slightly annoying about it, it's the camera. Or slightly annoying that it's hard to get over, it's the camera. So there have been instances where I go into a new area, I walk through a door, and then the second I walk through a door, an enemy, which was already there on the other side of the door, runs at me before I can even see them or react to them, and instantly gets into a battle with me where they start first, and then they hit on their first action, they hit me with a weakness, and then wipe my entire party. So you can literally walk through a door, get ambushed, and die. And there's very little you can do about it depending on how the game decides depending on like your situation and what weaknesses your party members have. So that is a little just a little bit annoying. Just a little bit annoying. Save often. You can basically save anywhere. And what else do I want to talk about? Yeah, so it's very unforgiving in the sense that like if your opponent gets an in, they can take it all the way to the bank and kill you outright. So it can be pretty brutal. But I don't actually mind it that much, because as I've played it more, I thought it was kind of ridiculous that, like, going through level 1 of Naraku, and I'm like my whole party is like level 15 and 16. And there is still the threat that I can get one shot by a level 1 enemy. Like, that's what kind of game it is. And I think it's okay. And I say that because obviously, if I had to give like an analysis of the like difficulty scaling in this game, I would say that being a higher level does not make you that much less susceptible to getting one shot, but it increases how easy it is. It makes it easier for you to one shot the opponent. So there's kind of this balance of most fights feel meaningful, in the sense that you could get a string of bad luck and miss attacks and just, get these random misses, which lose you like an extra action. So if it's like, you have 4 actions at the start, and if you swing and that misses, you now only have 2. You lose one. Having that, there's some like team configurations where it's like, okay, I run into these specific enemies and I already know what their weaknesses are. I can blow right through them. So as long as I get the first turn, I'm pretty good. And if I don't, I might take some hits here. So every fight throughout the game has remained at least a little bit tense. Because especially when you're still fighting enemies who are around your level, you can't kill them. You don't know if you can kill them quite fast enough. Especially if you don't know what their weaknesses are already. And I kind of like that, Something that it's definitely its own some people, it's its own appeal. Some people like playing an RPG where they can just get super strong and get to a point where they can just walk through mid-level enemies and below, right? They can just blow right through them. For some people, that might get a little boring, or it makes certain parts of the game irrelevant. What this does is that it keeps every fight at least a little open-ended, let's say. The possibility is there. So I'm really enjoying it from a aesthetically. The art is great. I love reading about the demons and like all of because they're all taken from folklore from different cultures and countries around the world. I love reading about the demon folklore. That stuff is super cool. And they all have different artwork. I think there's like a few different artists who work on it because there's just so many demons. So you kind of see like a few different art styles throughout. There's lots of really interesting, weird designs on the demons. The environments are pretty pleasing. It looks grungy and run down, which is the vibe it's going for. The music is fantastic. Such a good. I'm listening to it a lot right now, and it's really, really awesome. It sets the mood of the game, which I believe is going to get a lot darker than it already is. For reference, if anyone knows what I'm talking, if anyone's familiar with the game, I have just gotten to the point where I have unlocked the 3rd terminal. So I have the one at Mikado, I have the Sky one, and now I've just unlocked the 3rd terminal. If that gives you an idea. And I'm just doing challenge quests to oh yeah, I should mention that. So there is I should go back to the pacing of the game real quick. and then I'll get back to talking about the morality system in this game. So, this game does not seem like it's paced or really balanced for you to grind a lot. Like, you can kind of early, and there's a few sections where it's like, okay, this is your one area with a couple rooms and corridors that you can run around and get into random battles, and 5 feet over there is a room that you can go to that will refresh your entire party. Okay, cool, go grind maybe like a level if you don't feel strong enough. There's also a boss door at the end, so when you want to go fight the boss, go heal up. But the game generally, it gets to a point pretty early where the experience required for every level is so high that it's like it would be an absurd ask of the player to grind for that just to get a single level. And you get way more experience from just doing the main story quests, basically. So, like, once every fight will get you, like, 16 experience, 30 experience, and you need, like, 20,000 to hit, like, level 15, right? Like, so high. But then you do a story quest, and it's like, okay, here's 9,000 XP, here's 10,000 experience for completing this, like, leg of the story. And when you hit a wall of, like, a boss, generally it's not really about grinding. They seem to keep a very close control on what level you're at for the boss that you should be fighting. Like, if you're at this point, you are probably at, like, around this level. I feel like they have that in mind. More so, the solution is I need to, save before, go in, do some testing, figure out what their weakness is, figure out what attacks they do, and then reload the save, because you're probably going to lose. Reload the save. Now I'm going to go hunting and fusing for demons that have that an element, or that element in, like, a spell, or are, like, slash, like, and or are resistant to the main element the boss uses. Like, I hit the second main boss of the game uses a ton of what is it? She uses she's weak to force attacks, and she uses a lot of ranged attacks. So, which I need to do. A better example would be, like, the third, not really a major boss, it's kind of a mini boss. You fight to unlock the third terminal. You have to, he, like, deals force damage, and he's weak to, I think, like, fire or lightning or something. So I gotta look at my demons and be like, okay, these guys, so I need to stack it with ones that stack my team with demons who have lightning, and remove the ones that are weak to force. Because if he hits one force attack on them, he's just going to press turn me to death. So, yeah, it's using the levels seem like almost like a gate or a gauge of, like, how far you are. It's almost like a progress meter for how far you are in the game. And then you have these other, like, side quests you can do called challenge quests that are just, like, side missions that you can accept about, like, kill a certain enemy or get an item and return it to the little tavern you accept them at. Which leads me into talking about this game's morality system, because hot damn. This game, I did not realize it at the beginning, but this game, from what I discovered through a little Googling, a little game faxing, this game tracks everything. This game tracks literally, like, everything you do almost every dialogue option has some weight on the moral scale. And SMT has basically there's three paths. There's a law, chaos, and then the neutral between them. And essentially, it's not order, which is important thematically, from what I understand. It's not order or good, it's law and chaos. So, the way it works is that it goes from 100 to negative 100. So, positive 100 to negative 100, positive being law, negative being chaos. And actions you perform will either plus or minus your standing on the alignment chart. You cannot see the alignment chart. You have to track it yourself. And someone broke down, there's a GameFAQs guide that breaks down every single major choice and thing in the game that affects your morality, including the challenge quests, which some of them do because you're given dialogue choices during them. And there's essentially like two other characters who are like friends with you who represent, from what I can tell, the law and chaos sides. And you're immediately kind of foreshadowed that at the beginning. And you can tell because like you'll pick an answer that aligns more with one than the other, and then they'll make a comment agreeing or having a dispute over it. So, what is that? Right, so the morality. So the game basically tracks everything, and it's in, like, from what I see of the GameFAQs guide, like, big swell, like, plus 90, especially near the beginning. Like, it seems like the big pluses and minuses are more towards the beginning, and then as you go on throughout the game, it gets more to like, this is going to add or take away like 22 from the alignment. And if you are above negative 8 and positive 8, anywhere between those, including and between those, is from negative 8 to positive 8 is the neutral ending that you'll get. And apparently anything outside of that, and you'll get either law or chaos. And it's apparently it's very difficult to get the neutral ending unless you are really paying attention. And apparently there's like, I think it's like, I heard they were talking about this game on the Castle Super Beast podcast, and Pat mentioned that because Wooly's now playing SMT. I think they're both playing SMT5. And Pat mentioned that he was trying to do a playthrough of this game where he got the neutral ending. So he's trying to stick in that negative 8 to positive 8, that 16-point window where you'll get neutral. And he was right in there. And then there's like a choice where you have to choose one or the other, and it swings you super hard into one or the other. And so if you go in neutral, you will actually screw yourself over, because it throws you so hard to one side or the other that you cannot recover back to the neutral position. And supposedly from a YouTube comment I read, that's kind of the point. It's kind of the point. There's a whole that it's difficult to be neutral. And it got me thinking a lot about morality systems and the fact that, like, I think I talked about this when I went on that giant Star Wars rant in one episode, but I think, like, most games mishandle their morality systems. I think morality systems come from the huge Dungeons and Dragons influence that most, like, specifically RPGs have. And games are like, because in Dungeons and Dragons you can choose like what alignment you want your character to be, and then you can make decisions along the way or that like define your character's morality. And I think that games, RPGs, wanted to emulate that aspect of D&D while also I think in the process they forgot that they are also like, that they're not like experiential storytelling role-playing games, and that they are pieces of art, if that makes sense. What I'm trying to say is, I think like that works when you are trying to just create a story out of something, out of nothing, in a D&D game, right? When you are a game that has all of these extra systems around it, that is trying to tell a specific story, that has like themes and can be read into, I think that most morality systems tend to fall flat because they don't have anything to do with the actual like themes of the game, right? I'm trying to think, like, take a game like Fallout 3. You can make a lot of decisions in that game, right? A lot of you might call moral decisions, and that's part of the RPG element. And there's a whole morality system to track you on there. But is that game really like about morality? Is it about making moral or immoral choices, and does it say anything about those things? Like, these are things that when you're looking at a game as a piece of art that you have to consider. I'm not saying that it does or it doesn't. It might very well. I'm not familiar enough with the game. Maybe I should have picked a better example. But I think if it's not a part of the game's themes, it's just not actually jiving with the rest of the design. Things like your like reputation, like your standings with different factions within a game, I think those are great. I think those are perfectly fine, and those make sense. Especially if, like, I think it might actually make more sense because you as like, oftentimes, I think it's more, I don't know how am I trying to describe this. It's more of like an effective morality when it's something, when the game revolves around like what choices you are going to make, instead of tying it to something that brings in a ton of other stuff like morality and like ethics, tying it to how much does this people versus that people like you. Because calling something good or bad is like you're inherently making a statement about it, right? You're inherently making a statement, which is why when people make fun of, like, you can like slaughter a bunch of people in like Fallout, right? Just people who, even if they're thugs or criminals, didn't really do anything to you, and then you make a dialogue option and it's like good karma. And it's like ridiculous, right? It's stupid. It's much more, it's inviting less like criticism when you just have a system that says, okay, you did that. That's not necessarily good or bad, but it means that these people are going to like you more or dislike you, and maybe someone else is gonna, the vice versa. The vice versa. I think that generally I like those systems a lot more, because it also fits like narratively a lot better into gameplay. That's the other thing, is that when you tie a morality system to gameplay, for me, I don't know, I'm actually really curious, because I want to know, like, if you play games with morality systems that affect gameplay, like you will get an item or you will get access to a certain storyline or something like that, anything that is going to affect gameplay, does that increase your immersion in the world, or does it immediately detach you and you start just thinking about it as a video game that you need to work the system in order to, you're not making, like, because for me when that happens, I immediately start thinking like, okay, now I'm going to pull up the game facts. I'm going to see what you get for each side, right? Like when I played Knights of the Old Republic, I was like, okay, so like, what do you get if you go dark side versus light side. And I'm like, okay. So now I'm going to really prioritize one over the other. Not because I necessarily agree with it more, but because the gameplay implications. And it kind of just separates me from the choice in a way, because I'm only thinking about it not really in a moral way or a philosophical way, but in a purely utilitarian way. And if not that, then what ends up happening for most people is that I remember way back, or a year ago, when Baldur's Gate 3, which is still in early access. Baldur's Gate is like, they're trying to go like super D&D, super close to that type of an experience, and including like down to things like moral choices and alignments. And they released a thing that said, basically they said what kind of choices or what kind of alignments did most people end up with, like from the metrics based from their player base. Kind of like what game is it? Is it Mass Effect or Life is Strange? One of them, no. All the Telltale games, they would show you like how many people made certain choices. Like when you watch the credits, it would show you how many players made, what percentage of players did this versus that. They basically did the same thing, but like for Baldur's Gate 3. And guess what? The numbers broke down to something like 70% of people followed the good alignment, and like 20% of people went neutral, and like 10% of people went evil, right? Because most people play games as if like they were in the game, as if it was them. It's a role-playing game after all. And generally people like seeing, and you're like building your own story. In a way, you're telling your own story. And generally, if we had the choice and we like our characters, which we are our characters, so we probably should like them, you want to see good things happen. So you are always going, unless you like really despise a certain character, which takes a lot more work to like build up. But most people are just going to opt for, I want to see nice things happen, because even in a fictional setting, I don't like just the negative emotion. Maybe when I play a game that has an escapist element to it, I don't want to just be bombarded with more negative emotion. I'm not saying that you should look at all media as escapism. I think that's bad too. But like, it also like, I complained about this in that Star Wars episode too, about like, one of my big problems with the Old Republic was that the light side and dark side choices were so, the dark side choices in particular were so cartoonishly evil that it was like, one of them was literally like, kill a child in front of his father, or kill a father in front of his child to bring the child back to his mother, who wants to send him to a Sith academy where he's probably gonna die. And it's like, it was either that or like let the kid escape with the dad off planet and basically run away from the mom. And it's like, this is not a choice. This is not a choice. Who in their right mind, unless they're really hardcore role-playing as an evil Sith, is going to make the decision to shoot a child's father in front of them? So it's like, no, like this is not an equivalent choice. This is not an equivalent choice. It's like if someone was running an orphanage that was also like a money laundering scheme, and you were given the choices: allow the money laundering scheme to keep running, or burn down the orphanage with all of the children inside. It's like, what? This is not even an interesting moral question. It's not. Gee, come on. What the hell? So, what I'm saying is, what I'd like to get to is I like it when games divorce the moral choices from gameplay. I like it when you play a game and you can just make a decision without having to think about, oh, is this going to like get me like whatever? Is this going to get me an item? Is this going to be better for me in some kind of statistical way, which is really easy to do with RPGs. Really easy to fall back on that. Because in a weird way, having that, you think as like a designer that like, oh, I connect the story to the gameplay. But really, in a weird way, it kind of like ends up disconnecting you from the story. And I much prefer, I think this is one area where maybe there's a game that does it really well, I don't know, feel free to tell me in the comments. But this is one area where I feel like gameplay and story should be separate. In a way, it allows you to almost turn your story choices into a mechanic. Like, I am thinking, like, the story is a system. The story is a system and a mechanic. And the same way that I would, like, go down different paths on a skill tree, I am choosing to go down different paths on the story. And I do not and when I do the skill tree, I'm just thinking about, like, the skills that I'm getting and how they're going to help me in the gameplay. And I'm not thinking, maybe that's what it is that it's like, the story affects the gameplay, but the gameplay does not really affect the story as much. Maybe that's where a lot of games like mess up or something. Because it's like, I'm leveling up my skill tree. And that is... So you have like the crossover from like A to B. Right? What am I talking about? No. I am leveling up my skill tree and I'm just thinking about how this is I'm gonna use this new skill in combat. Or you are, or you know, in conversations and stuff like that, like increasing your charisma or something like that. Or, and on the other side, you have, I'm making the story decision and I'm thinking about stuff that is not the story. I think that's the problem. That if you're going to do it, like, or it's a problem. If you're going to do it, have them actually affect each other. Have the gameplay affect that's, oh my god, what I'm thinking of is fucking Disco Elysium. I'm thinking of Disco Elysium. Disco Elysium is literally a game where you level up your, like, mental, or you develop your different mental paths and skill sets, and it directly affects the gameplay. And the gameplay directly affects the story. They're basically the same thing. Oh my god, I'm thinking of it. And guess what? Everybody fucking loves Disco Elysium. Oh my god. Wow, what a great revelation. What a great revelations persona. To bring it back to SMT. I like that SMT4, at least this game, has, to this point, kept the story choices and the morality and alignment from interfering with the gameplay or cross-contaminating with the gameplay. Because I'm just allowed to think about the choices as I want to think about them, right? As I want to act in the world. And it doesn't break my immersion that they are not necessarily having an effect. Like, if you were more aligned to law than chaos, all of your law-aligned demons get plus on their, like, whatever on their stats, depending on how far you are. And then the other way for your negative one, for your chaos demons. And I don't want that. It's, you can think, like, as you can imagine as a designer, it's like, ooh, rubbing your hands together like, that's a perfect integration of these two systems. No. You think it's cool, and it's not overtly terrible, but it does detract from the story, because now I'm not thinking about the story choice, I'm thinking about, okay, if I take this choice, I'm going to get like plus 20 to my law. So all of my law line demons, because there's a chaos fight that's coming up and they're going to be stronger against him. So I want to buff them up with my alignment. And now I'm not actually thinking about the story. And the story choice almost becomes superfluous. It just becomes a skill point. A different kind of skill point you're distributing. But it's not doing that. Anyway, SMT4, super cool. I heard SMT5 is also really good, which is great. If you are a fan of Persona, do not expect Persona. Expect Persona in terms of many gameplay aspects. A lot of the things are going to be familiar, gameplay-wise and mechanics-wise, but thematically and the vibe and the tone of the game, there's no life simulator elements. There's not really you're not spending all your time getting into anime antics in Japanese high school. You're plunging into the depths of hell. And you're having visions of a future apocalypse. I don't know what that's about yet. But go play it. Great game, great soundtrack. Great gameplay so far. And I've heard it's really good, so I'm expecting it to keep up. Jeez, okay. This is one of the longer episodes. My throat's starting to get tired. I gotta take some laundry out of the wash. And, out of the dryer. And I just got some new... trying my sheets. I have some new sheets to sleep on. Gonna be comfy. And if you have any comments or questions, leave them. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. I will definitely get to them next time. Thank you so much for all of the support that I've been getting recently. I took the last week off. I don't want to take that many weeks off. I might take off like 1 week a month. I don't know. 4 videos is a lot for a month. And not really in terms of like making them, but like it's kind of hard to come up with ideas. Gonna let you in a little secret. It's kind of hard to come up with ideas. And I have some ideas that I still want to do, but it's like, it's a very awkward time to start being like, what do I make a video about next week? It's when I have had a huge growth spurt. But still, thank you and all that. I'm really looking forward to future stuff. Thank you everyone for listening to the podcast if you've made it this far. Yeah. I will see you next week. There'll be a video at the end of the week on Friday. Goodbye.